Hello everyone, today you join me in a Lexus GS300. They're a car that I've been keeping an eye on for quite some time, and they've always piqued my curiosity, but they've never come close enough to being a car that I have ever owned. I think it's pretty fair to say that this car is an absolute bargain. If you want luxurious motoring on the cheap, the GS300 is just the darling of that scene. This and its Japanese cousin, the Toyota Aristo, seem to appear on nearly any YouTube channel that have even the slightest hint of love for Japanese stuff and big bargain luxury cruisers. I mean, let's face it, this is basically, for many people, the cheapest way to get into a 2JZ motor. Now, this is the naturally aspirated version of that engine, pushing out about 220 horsepower and about 220 pound-feet of torque, and that's coupled to a 5-speed automatic gearbox. Now, there are people that will be buying this car for that engine, but I think for most, the reason they buy it is because they just want something that's incredibly wafty. It's basically a Japanese Jag. Now, to look at it, this is a very, very unremarkable car, and that's a plus point for many people that want to buy it. They don't want anything particularly showy or fancy or that's going to attract a lot of attention. This is a deliberately understated car. That being said, the choice of engines is definitely not understated at all. In fact, the naturally aspirated 2JZ is the base engine choice for this car. Remember those good old days when the straight 6 petrol engine was the economical and cheap option? The alternative was a 4 and later 4.3 litre V8. Itself not particularly powerful because it was built for being simply smooth and luxurious and just everything you want from a cruiser. Just driving this car around town at very modest speeds, you can tell that's exactly what it was designed to be. And I have to say, for a car that is a decade and a half old and with nearly 100,000 miles on the clock, it's remarkably free of rattles and squeaks. That's not to say completely free, I'm sure there's a couple in here somewhere, but this certainly does not feel like a cheap car from where I'm sitting. Yeah, sure, all the switches and things are from 20-year-old Japanese car, but it is nearly 20-year-old Japanese car, so I really can't hold that against it. The steering is nice and light, and the gearbox is just slushing away, doing its own thing. Now, those of you that are hoping to hear some really naughty, tasty sounds from that 2JZ are going to be disappointed. This is a completely stock car, including the exhaust, and you basically can't hear it at all. Now, I did a little bit of research the other day going through the classifieds, and you can pick these up for about 2 to 3 grand. Now, the Toyota Aristo is going to be a lot more, mostly I think because of that JDM appeal. It's a very odd car, this era of Lexus. Now, for those of you who don't really understand, I'm sure you know what Lexus is. Of course, it's the luxury arm of Toyota. But one thing I learned recently when working with Toyota is what really is the difference between a Toyota and a Lexus. Toyota is a global brand. You buy a Toyota, it can be designed, assembled, manufactured anywhere in the world. You know, Toyota have plants in France, all over the shop. A Lexus, however, is a Japanese car. It is designed, built, painted, all in Japan. They are very, very proud of it. And not only the cars, but also the dealers must adhere very strictly to very high standards and many Japanese principles of customer service. I've only been to a Lexus dealer once, very briefly. That's Stephen Eagle in Ipswich, and I must say it was one of the best dealer experiences I have ever had in my life. I was there unannounced with a friend who was looking at various different cars, and I said you should have a look at the LC500, so we popped down there as they had one, and within a few minutes we were made to feel like people that had been shopping at that dealership for a decade or so. They were great, nice, friendly, knowledgeable people, even down to the cleaning lady who was polishing all the silverware. Everyone was attentive and wanted to make sure that you were satisfied and happy as a customer, and they were all very keen to know if there's anything that they could do for you. That, to me, is what a dealership experience should be all about. People that have parted with good money for their cars should be rewarded with that level of service, and Lexus seem to appreciate that. I can see exactly why Lexus customers become Lexus customers for life. Now, the odd thing about the Lexus brand is that despite it having this Japaneseness coursing through it, Japaneseness being at the heart of what they are and what they do, they didn't actually exist in Japan until the launch of the LFA. Very strange. If you wanted to buy one of these in Japan, you bought it from a Toyota dealer, and one of the high-end Toyota dealers, because in Japan there isn't just a Toyota dealer. They have, I believe, 3 or 4 different types of dealership that you go to, and you bought these from the posh one. Now, on the road, this car is just serene, peaceful. It's reasonably quiet, not super insulated, but you certainly feel cosseted, and you don't feel any real desire to sort of push on. Now, there are buttons on the steering wheel for changing gear up and down. You can also select a couple of the gears here yourself, but this isn't built to do that. That's not what it's for. The view out is perfectly decent. The amount of leather in here is ludicrous. It's a very, very nice car, very nice place to be. There's little features as well, like if you're sat in the back, there's little air vents pointed at the bottom of your feet, so you're nice and toasty warm, even if you're in the cheap seats. Now, I know this road very well. It's an awfully paved road. That's one of the reasons that I like it, because it's a great way of testing a car's suspension and prowess and handling ability. Now, handling is not something that this car is great at, and I've been forewarned by its owner that this is not its natural environment, so I got no interest in hoofing it round corners. What I am very impressed at, though, is the level of ride comfort that it's maintaining, even at national speed limit, which is 60 miles an hour. The steering is nice and direct. You feel you have a sense of authority over the car. And the brake pedal is a little heavily servoed for my liking, but then I have gotten used to relatively soft pedals of late. Now, whenever looking at any of these kind of cars, big luxury bargain barges, there's of course always going to be some hidden costs. Now, taxing this car in the UK is going to vary. Some of them are of a certain age where tax is quite cheap, and some of them are of an age where it's not. So this particular car is £350 a year to tax, which is not horrendous. There are much more expensive cars out there, but there are also much cheaper. However, if you've just signed yourself up for a 3-litre straight 6 with an auto box from 15 years ago, I think the tax cost is the least of your worries. What's going to be a more pressing concern is fuel consumption, and that is awful. You're going to do low teens around town and low to mid-20s on the motorway, depending on how heavy your right foot is. It's just not built for economy, this car. Nothing about it is, and it comes from an era when people really didn't care that much, so that's something you are going to have to brace yourself for if you want to sign up for this car. However, I can think of very, very few cars this side of £3,000 which are gonna feel this nice. So there's that as well. Insurance hopefully shouldn't be too bad on these. I haven't put any quotes in, and the problem with doing that is that I can only tell you how expensive a car will be for me to insure it, and from experience people get radically different quotes to what I do. So this car's owner had the Corsa VXR that you may have seen on the channel, so it's quite a change for him. For whatever reason, his insurance is actually about double in this what it was in the Corsa. Why that is, I can't possibly fathom, because if I was an insurance company and I had a choice of insuring someone driving one of these or driving a Corsa VXR, I know which risk I'd want to take. It's a little bit of a time warp in here, very reminiscent of, say, a Jaguar S-Type, that kind of thing. You've got the cassette player down here and the Lexus premium sound system, but other than that, this is kind of exactly what I expected it to be. Now, I thought that even though this is a Japanese designed and assembled car, that it might have a few key issues or horror stories which are helping keep the prices of them low. But actually, having done a casual bit of Googling, the main issues people raised with these are headlights that go a bit misty and door actuators that fail. Now, apparently those aren't cheap, but then again, a lot of these threads you'll find will be from people talking about the car 10 years ago when they were much newer. And the passage of time means that you'll find more of these in scrap yards, meaning there are more cheaply available spare parts of them, and if you're trying to run this thing on a budget, that's only a good thing. So the GS300, what do I think? It's not a car that I'm ever going to own because I just don't have need for it, and when I have need of a cheap car, generally one of my priorities is that it's going to be fairly cheap and easy on fuel, because if I want to just throw money away at the petrol station, I have other cars to do that in. But if you want something a little bit different and a little bit fun for no money at all, and if you're a petrol head and you want to do something with that exhaust and hear a bit more of that gorgeous 2JZ noise, well, you can't go far wrong. So this is only the second Lexus that I've ever driven. The first one was the LC500, and so far Lexus are doing pretty good by me. So hope you've enjoyed this brief little look at this little Japanese gem, which started off as something of a high-class workhorse and now really is more working-class hero. So well done, Lexus. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.